Welcome to another episode of the Leadership Genius Podcast, your resource for everything leadership. I'm your host, Jason Diamond Arnold, and this episode we're going to talk about I would say, somewhat controversial, or at least heavily talked about email that Elon Musk sent out this past weekend to federal employees, asking them or commanding them to give a response to the email, 5 things that they did within the last work week. And the rest of the email went on to say, if you don't respond, you will consider this your resignation if you don't respond. So obviously it's kicked up a lot of conversation. The social network, social media, LinkedIn have been having a conversation about this, lively discussions that are going on. And I wanted to talk about this, not from a political perspective again. We avoid getting into taking political sides in the Leadership Genius podcast, and we want to talk about the leadership aspects to this, the pros and cons, the things that happen, whether we're talking about the leadership genius of a particular individual, or we're talking about something that's happened in the news. We're talking about a leadership theory. We're talking about a leadership practice. We just want to talk about leadership and understand our perspective on these different types of events or things that take place or bodies of knowledge that affect our leadership. So this episode of the Leadership Genius podcast, we're analyzing the email that was sent out by Elon Musk. Before we get into that, I wanted to say it's ironic because this email plays right into Inspire Software. Inspire Software has helped sponsor this podcast, and so what we wanted to do was take the time to recognize and thank Inspire Software. Inspire really helps organizations create strategy and then create a goal-setting software or application that goes with it, particularly around OKRs. It's a goal-setting methodology. It's being widely used by organizations today. And then regular check-ins on those goals, to update tasks, to have team meetings, to have one-to-one meetings and conversations about the OKRs that you or your team are working on. And then therefore, that produces data that goes up to the organizational level to make sure that everyone is aligned and on track towards their goals. So thanks again for Inspire Software sponsoring or supporting this podcast. And so we hope that you go check them out at inspiresoftware.com. So on that note, being that that's what we do with our clients, is have regular check-ins on people's work activity, and what they're doing to make progress towards goals, either as individuals or check-ins as they're executing the strategy or executing the goals. And that's the work that we do with our clients at Inspire Software. And the Leadership Genius is a leadership theory that's built into it to help facilitate those conversations. Now, what's interesting about Elon's email to the federal workforce, one, there's a lot of speculation as to why it went out that way. But let's just look at the command in and of itself. By and large, this is highly directive. This is highly top-down approach to leadership and accountability. And what sets a lot of people off, and this is not aligned to best practices in terms of how Leadership Genius would promote people being held accountable for their work. But the email was a very imposed, very top-down approach, saying, give us 5 things or else, really your job is on the line here. Now, we don't support that that's a way to do it, yet I don't want to throw the idea out just because of the way it was communicated. But I first want to acknowledge that the way it was communicated by sending out an ultimatum to report on what you're doing or not is not the best approach to doing it. And by the way, if you're not already doing this, if you don't have a system in place that has regular check-ins or accountability, or you're not doing one-to-ones, or even if you are and you're not capturing that data, then imposing or expecting people to report in on something that's not set up as a process is probably not a very good idea, and it's going to have some serious ripple effects and a dramatic impact on engagement and retention, which may be part of the strategy by the Doge's actions, is to try to have some turnover with people not responding. Again, I don't want to go down that rabbit trail. What I want to do is focus on, one, the initiative that was sent out, and the imposed motivation that creates for our workforce is not aligned to what we would promote as best practice in leadership genius. So let's talk about the process. Let's talk about, on a very base level, to be able to report out on 5 things that you did over the past week is a very common, or I should say, should be a very common practice in the workplace, whether you're working for the federal government, whether you're an employee with a private organization, a publicly held organization, whether you're working for a nonprofit or a for-profit. Having a system of accountability is very important to not only the organization that's funding the employees, but it's also empowering to the individual contributor to be able to account for what they're doing on a weekly basis. So setting up a process where people can understand how their team or individual goals align to the vision or strategy of the organization and the values of the organization is a fundamental practice, fundamental best practice in terms of performance from an organizational level. From an individual level, I want people to know what I'm doing on a consistent basis. I want people on my team to know what the top 5 things are that I'm working on this week. I want to be able to articulate, I feel not only proud about the work that I'm doing, but I also want to use that as a tool to be able to collaborate with others, whether it's my manager, whether it's a team leader, whether it's my teammates. I think it's very important for me to be able to express to the rest of the team what I'm working on. So in an agile process or a lean process, this is often done through daily stand-ups where people will report out on what they're doing on a daily basis, but at least on a weekly, bi-weekly maximum basis, it's very good for teams to have check-ins, to go down through what people are executing on over the past week or two. And then from a one-to-one perspective, and this is the research that I'm doing at the University of San Diego around my PhD program, is to have regular one-to-one conversations that have built-in leadership practices into those conversations to increase the quality of those conversations. One, for me as an individual self-leader, I'm practicing self-leadership and being able to manage up and report to and have conversations with my manager or team leaders about. And then from a team leader or managerial perspective, using a leadership language to then communicate back to an individual like myself or other individuals is a best practice. And what this does is this not only creates accountability, it empowers the individual worker to be able to communicate, ask for help, ask for support, be able to recognize great performance. And so this is a very positive thing for people to be able to check in on a team goal or an individual goal on a consistent basis. And so, that's what we do with Inspire, is created a platform that allows the company to set a strategy, then by departments, be able to create goals around that align to that strategy, and then get that down to a team or individual level and people contributing, and everyone's moving in the same direction in that way. So overall, I think it's a very good idea to be able to report out on 5 things that you're doing on a weekly basis or at a bi-weekly basis. That being said, it should be something that everyone in the company has an opportunity to buy into and participate, be able to autonomously participate in. And if you don't have that process set up, then it's going to be a change management challenge, is to go and set those processes up, set the right types of goals, articulate that it's expected that people will check in on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. And what do those check-ins look like? So overall, I think it's a great idea for the workplace. How you implement it and how you communicate that as a norm for an organization is quite a different story, and it takes some effective leadership skills to be able to do it effectively. But I'd like to hear from you. Please leave comments here, whether you're listening to the podcast on Spotify, Apple, whatever your favorite podcast platform you're streaming this from. Please leave comments for us in there, respectfully, and please focus on the leadership behavior as it relates to this topic that we've talked about. Or if you're joining us on YouTube, I'd love for you to like and subscribe to us and leave your comments. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are in terms of a leadership perspective, what Elon Musk did in this directive that he sent out in the email over the weekend. And please go check out Inspire Software. This is one of the most relevant topics that we've talked about in a long time on the Leadership Genius, how it directly relates to the work that we do with our clients at Inspire Software. Thank you so much for joining us. The world needs more effective leaders, as demonstrated more than ever in our environment today. We need effective leadership practices. We need effective leadership skills, and leadership needs to be happening at all levels of the organization, of the community, within your families. Thanks for joining the Leadership Genius podcast. Please go out and make the world a better place through the effective practice of leadership skills.